Well, good morning, and welcome to Ordinary Time, and welcome to a new series called Nazareth. As I mentioned to us yesterday at Mass, we start a new liturgical season, and we are now in Ordinary Time. The liturgical season of Advent brought us to the liturgical season of Christmas, and the church has concluded the liturgical season of Christmas, and a new time for us in the church, Ordinary Time, unfolds. And as today is the first real day of Ordinary Time, we begin a new series as we celebrate a new place that we are also. Now, Nazareth, why do we call this Nazareth, and what does Nazareth have to teach us? Well, we just came out of Christmas, and Mary and Joseph have been teaching us for a long time. Mary and Joseph taught us about Advent. We looked to them about how to live during Advent. Likewise, we looked to Mary and Joseph to learn how to live during Christmas. It was the two of them who have been our teachers. They have taught us about the pilgrimage of Advent and Christmas. Now, I think a lot of times what happens in life is we shift out of the holidays back into some, false understanding of quote-unquote the real world. For a lot of us, what happens is we're plugged into a new spiritual reality during Advent. We're plugged into a new spiritual reality for some of Christmas, and then we make a shift around this time of January, and many of us, quote unquote, go back to the real world, as if what we had experienced during Advent and Christmas wasn't real. So here's a question: what was life like for Mary and Joseph a couple weeks after Jesus' birth? Because that's where we find ourselves. Just a couple weeks ago, we were celebrating Christmas, and if we shift into quote-unquote the real world without the very person that was brought into our world, then how real is the world that we're living in? Like, I can promise you, a few weeks after Christmas, Mary and Joseph were very much focused on the person that they received at Christmas. So let's take a look at their life, and as they are now in reality going to be stuck with the task of raising Jesus and living with Jesus, that's where we want to be. So let's look at the scriptures. The Gospel of Matthew ends the Christmas story by the flight into Egypt, but he has them eventually returning to Nazareth. The Gospel of Luke in the Christmas story ends with the presentation in the temple, and then in chapter 2 it has them going to Nazareth. So both Gospels bring the Holy Family to Nazareth, and it's there in Nazareth where Jesus was raised as an infant. It's there in Nazareth that he was raised as a teenager. It's there in Nazareth that Mary and Joseph lived out their marriage. Mary was his mother. Joseph was his father on earth. It's there in Nazareth that Jesus learned so much about life. So Nazareth has a lot to teach us about life. And so instead of us shifting into some secular, quote-unquote, real world, let's just stay with Mary and Joseph, and let's let them teach us how to live in our lives by them teaching us what Nazareth was really about. And the first thing that we can learn about Nazareth is that that's where God was. There's nothing really extraordinary about Nazareth. We see in the Gospel of John that Nathanael scoffs at Nazareth as he says, what good can come from Nazareth? There was nothing extraordinary about it. It wasn't as special as Jerusalem or some of the other areas of Galilee. It was a small town kind of tucked in the middle of nowhere. But that's where God led them. God led them to Nazareth. And so if that's where God led them, that's where Mary was going to find God. If that's where God led them, that's where Joseph was going to find God and ultimate fulfillment in life. What we see about Nazareth is that that's where God led them, and that's where Mary and Joseph found God. And likewise, it's important for us to know that we have to find God where he has led us. It's real easy for us to wonder what life would be like somewhere else other than our circumstances in life. We can wonder if I would be happier if I had more money, or I'd be happier if I had this, or I'd be happier if I had a different spouse, or if my spouse were different. I'd be happier if my kids were different, or you can fill in the blank. It's easy for us to get lured into thinking that I'd only be happy if things were different. If I wasn't where I am in life, then I'd be happy. Well, here's the thing. If God has led you to where you are, then that's where you're going to find God. We're going to find God in the midst of the struggle of ordinary life. And that's what Mary and Joseph teach us in Nazareth. So my encouragement to us today is to be where we are, to be present to the present moment, and to be present to the places and spaces and situations where God has led us. For your prayer today, I would encourage you to pray with Isaiah chapter 49. That's a chapter in the scriptures that Mary and Joseph would have prayed with themselves. And as you look on the blog, I've got this specific passage listed for you right there. It's Isaiah chapter 49, verses 13 to 16. I would encourage you to maybe pray with that a couple times. And as you read it, 1, 2, maybe 3 times, read it slower and see if there's a word or phrase that really kind of speaks to you. But as you pray with the scripture passage today, talk to God about where you are. Are you happy with where you are? And can you be present to where you are? And trust that God is where you are. God bless you.